Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a biology student or honestly just someone fascinated by nature, you're in the right place. Today, we're going to completely shatter the myth that evolutionary thought magically began the second Charles Darwin stepped onto the HMS Beagle. We're actually diving into the brilliant first chapter of Dr. Richard Murdoch Montgomery's book, History of Evolutionary Thought in the 19th Century, which, by the way, you can grab on Amazon. We're going to explore a really rich, complex intellectual tradition that was grappling with the mysteries of biological diversity for literally 2 millennia before Darwin. Here's our roadmap for today's chronological journey. We've got 1. Ancient roots of biology, 2. The great chain of being, 3. Art shaping biological thought, 4. The Enlightenment transformist shift, and 5. Lessons for modern conservation. All right, Section 1, Ancient Roots of Biology, Debating the Origins of Life. Let's jump right into our first era. Right off the bat, we see a massive philosophical clash. On one side, you have the materialist views of early thinkers like Empedocles and Lucretius. They actually proposed naturalistic, chance-based explanations. They were talking about random atomic combinations, trial and elimination, stuff that sounds surprisingly modern, right? But that clashed directly against the purposeful teleological design championed by Plato and Aristotle. They argued for an intelligent craftsman and eternal archetypes, a vision that ultimately ended up suppressing those early materialist ideas. And taking a look at this first printed edition of Aristotle's De Animalibus brilliantly illustrates exactly who won that ancient debate. Aristotle established a systematic biological classification, grouping animals into blood-bearing and bloodless categories. But the real kicker here? He conceived of species as eternal, fixed sequences. That single concept provided a metaphysical framework that effectively locked out the possibility of fundamental species change, and it dominated scientific understanding for over 2,000 years. Moving right along to Section 2, the Great Chain of Being, a hierarchical universe. So as we move into the medieval synthesis, we hit a concept that wasn't just about biology. It was literally the blueprint for society itself. We're talking about the Great Chain of Being. When medieval Christian doctrine merged with Aristotelian philosophy, they created this massive cosmic hierarchy. It was driven by the principles of plenitude, meaning every possible form of existence just must exist, and continuity. This meant there were absolutely no gaps in nature and zero room for species to change. Everything was exactly where it was divinely supposed to be. If you look closely at this diagram of the Scala Naturae, the ladder of life, you'll notice something super interesting. See how it visually places humanity strictly above nature? We're wedged right in the middle, above the animal kingdom but below the divine. This wasn't just a biological sorting system. It actively cemented our perceived dominance over the natural world. It was a completely static, linear model of existence. Now, here's where biology gets deeply political. It's truly fascinating how these pre-Darwinian biological ideas bled directly into human sociology. If the natural world was this rigid, divinely ordained hierarchy with fixed species, well then the argument was that human society should perfectly reflect that. This biological model was essentially weaponized to legitimize feudal hierarchies and absolute power structures. It powerfully discouraged any speculation about natural change because, that might encourage people to start thinking about social change. Which brings us to Section 3, Art Shaping Biological Thought, Visual Forensics. We often just think of ancient texts as, text, but their visual preservation, the actual way the ink hits the vellum, was the crucial vessel that transmitted Greek natural philosophy down through the generations. Without this painstakingly preserved visual culture, the theories of Aristotle and Plato simply wouldn't have survived to shape the Middle Ages. Just look at this medieval bestiary. Half these animals look like angry mythical creatures, right? That's because early anatomical drawings cataloged biological diversity not by genetics or strict anatomy, but through strict moral and theological frameworks. The animals are depicted based on their symbolic or religious meaning. It perfectly illustrates how the culture of the time literally dictated how scientists were allowed to see nature. As this quote highlights, for anyone studying biology, it's absolutely crucial to understand that the evolution of scientific thought is inextricably linked to the evolution of scientific art. A diagram isn't just a pretty drawing. It's a window into the prevailing paradigm of that era. The way we draw the world actually limits the way we think about the world. Let's break that mold in Section 4, the Enlightenment transformist shift, breaking the static mold. Before we meet the 18th century rebels, we kind of need to understand the establishment they were up against, natural theology. This was famously championed by William Paley's watchmaker argument. The logic goes like this. If you find a pocket watch in a field, its complex gears imply there must be a watchmaker. Paley applied this exact same logic to the human eye and all biological life, arguing that intricate biological structures proved the existence of an intelligent designer. But things were starting to shift. Check out the incredible precision in these 18th century specimen drawings. Naturalists were out there collecting massive amounts of empirical data from global exploration, and they were noticing similarities across species and geographic distributions that simply couldn't be explained by a static linear ladder. All this hard empirical data was the spark that ignited transformist ideas. Let's track this on a timeline really quick. We've gone from ancient fixed species with Aristotle through the rigid medieval hierarchy of the Great Chain, and now, bam, we arrive at revolutionary Enlightenment transformism. Thinkers like Jean-Baptiste Lamarck began suggesting that organisms possessed an inherent tendency toward complexity and could actually change over time through natural processes. You really can't overstate the impact of guys like Georges-Louis Leclerc, Comte de Buffon here. His monumental Histoire naturelle introduced the theory of degeneration. Now, this was the radical idea that species could actually change over time due to environmental influences. This was an earth-shattering break from the static, great chain of being. It was a total game changer, and the crucial paradigm shift that prepped the soil for Darwin. And that leads us to our final part, Section 5, Lessons for Modern Conservation, Humboldt's Holism. So why does all this old history matter to us today? Well, because despite its flaws, the pre-Darwinian emphasis on harmony, purpose, and interconnection offers a really powerful blueprint from modern ecology. Take Alexander von Humboldt, for example. He wasn't looking at nature purely as a competitive, mechanistic struggle for survival. He saw vegetation zones, climate, and deep interconnection. His holistic view provides some incredible alternatives to the highly utilitarian approach we often take when managing ecosystems today. Humboldt literally saw nature as an interconnected whole. And his profound observation reminds us that this ancient, holistic worldview is exactly what we are desperately trying to relearn in our current environmental stewardship efforts. By recognizing these deep interdependencies, we can respect and protect biological diversity in a way that purely mechanistic models sometimes miss. So I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. We've seen how the Great Chain of Being was used to put humanity above the natural world, which led to centuries of domination and extraction. But if we reach back past that, to that ancient holistic vision of interconnection, could that actually be the key to saving our planet's biodiversity today? Think about that as you step out of today's explainer and into your future as stewards of the natural world. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey through the history of evolutionary thought.